I'm recording this video with permission from Scholastic. So welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be reading chapter 19 and chapter 20 of the Tale of Despereaux. I want to quickly refresh your memory. Remember at the end of the last chapter, we learned that the rat Despereaux decided to kind of be sneaky and mean to the prisoner who just came into the dungeon and steal his red cloth, and kind of like he bought into what Botticelli was saying about how rats don't need light and how evil is the purpose of the world. And we learn at the very end, what does it say? It says at the end, Despereaux knew that Botticelli was wrong. What Despereaux wanted, what he needed, was not the cloth, but the light that had shone behind it. And at the very end, it says that he knew he must go upstairs. And so I think, based on how the author left things off, we might think that maybe Despereaux's going to try to maybe escape or just go towards the light, which is a very un-rat-like thing to do, according to this book. And Despereaux, our mouse friend here, is also pretty unlike his kind, and he is fascinated with humans versus like all of his kind think humans are horrible. And so there is an interesting parallel between these two characters, and let's just keep reading to see what happens. Chapter 19 is called Light, Light Everywhere. Imagine, if you will, having spent the whole of your life in a dungeon. Imagine that late one spring day you step out of the dark and into a world of bright windows and polished floors, winking copper pots, shining suits of armor, and tapestries sewn in gold. Imagine. And while you are imagining things, imagine this too. Imagine that at the same time the rat steps from the dungeon and into the castle, a mouse is being born upstairs. A mouse, reader, who is destined to meet the light-bedazzled rat. Ooh, so I think these characters are going to intersect. What we learn here is that when the rat is going upstairs, it's happening at the same time as Despereaux being born. So these have a little bit different timeline. They're not the same age. But that meeting will occur much later. And for now, the rat is nothing but happy, delighted, and amazed to find himself standing in so much light. I, said Despereaux, spinning dizzily from one bright thing to the next, will never leave. No, never. I will never go back to the dungeon. Why would I? I will never torture another prisoner. It is here that I belong. The rat waltzed happily from room to room until he found himself at the door into the banquet hall. He looked inside and saw gathered there King Philip, Queen Rosemary, the Princess P, 20 noble people, a juggler, 4 minstrels, and all the king's men. The party, reader, was a sight for the rat's eyes. Despereaux had never seen happy people. He had only known the miserable ones. Gregory the jailer and those who were consigned to his domain did not laugh or smile or clink glasses with the person sitting next to them. Despereaux was enchanted. Everything glittered, everything. The gold spoons on the table and the jingle bells on the juggler's cap, the strings on the minstrels' guitars, and the crowns on the king's and queen's heads. And the little princess, how lovely she was, how much like light itself. Her gown was covered in sequins that winked and glimmered at the rat. And when she laughed, and she laughed often, everything around her seemed to glow brighter. Oh, really, said Despereaux, this is too extraordinary. This is too wonderful. I must tell Botticelli that he's wrong. Suffering is not the answer. Light is the answer. And he made his way into the banquet hall. He lifted his tail off the ground and held it at an angle and marched in time to the music what the minstrels were playing on their guitars. That rat, reader, invited himself to the party. So again, I said that we're going to be reading 2 chapters. So that was just chapter 19, but we learned that Despereaux goes upstairs. We don't really learn how he goes. Maybe he's just allowed to freely go, or maybe the author will say that a little bit later, but we're going to continue on with chapter 20 called A View from a Chandelier. There was, in the banquet hall, a most beautiful and ornate chandelier. The crystals that hung from it caught the light of the candles on the table and the light from the face of the laughing princess. They danced to the rhythm of the minstrel's music, swaying back and forth, twinkling and beckoning. What better place to view all this glory, all this beauty? There was so much laughing and singing and juggling, and no one noticed as Despereaux crawled up the table leg and onto the table, and from there flung himself onto the lowest branch of the chandelier. Hanging by one paw, he swung back and forth, admiring the spectacle below him, the smells of the food, the sounds of the music, and the light, the light, the light. Amazing, unbelievable. Despereaux smiled and shook his head. So he's hanging from the chandelier on top of the ceiling. He's hanging from the light. Unfortunately, a rat can hang from a chandelier only so long before he is discovered. This would be true at even the loudest party. Reader, do you know who it was who spotted him? You're right. The sharp-eyed Princess P. A rat, she shouted. A rat is hanging from the chandelier. The party, as I have noted, was loud. The minstrels were strumming and singing. The people were laughing and eating, and the man with the jingle cap was juggling and jingling. No one, in the midst of all of this, heard the P. No one except for Roscoe. Rat. He had never before been aware of what an ugly word it was. Here's a picture of Roscoe hanging from the chandelier. Rat. In the middle of all that beauty, it immediately became clear that it was an extremely distasteful syllable. Rat. A curse, an insult, a word totally without light. And not until he heard it from the mouth of the princess did Roscoe realize that he did not like being a rat, that he did not want to be a rat. This revelation hit Roscoe with such force that it made him lose his grip on the chandelier. The rat, reader, fell. And alas, he fell right directly into the queen's bowl of soup. And that's the end of the chapter. So these were two kind of short chapters. That's why we decided to read them together. I think this one had a funny ending where he lands in the queen's soup. That's kind of gross in our eyes, but probably kind of a funny scene to watch if you were at the party. And so I do think it's interesting. We talked about the parallel between Despereaux and Roscoe earlier, the rat and the mouse, and we learn here that it's kind of continuing. He learned that he doesn't want to be a rat. He doesn't like what rats stand for. He doesn't like torturing people and being in the dark. And it kind of seems like Despereaux's in a similar space where he doesn't really like being a mouse. He kind of likes to, he's intrigued by the princess. He's intrigued by humans and unmouse-like things. And so I do think that these characters are similar, and I'm excited to see how they unfold in this book. So hang on to that. Stay tuned for our next video, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye, everyone.